Wait, did Trump finally admit that he lost?
In the election of 2020 than we did in 2016. Just remember that. Millions and millions of votes more. More votes than any sitting president in the history of our country. But they beat us by a whisker. They beat us just by a little whisker. He beat us from the basement.
He's saying it now, which is sort of better than never, but it's still way too late.
If he were to lose again, what would that mean for the country, in your opinion?
You mean if President Trump was to lose for the first time? He's never lost a presidential election. Well, yeah, he had a historic turnout. 81 million people have never turned out for a presidential election. You know were you up on election day? Were you up when they stopped counting, which has never happened before, until they calculated how many fake votes that were trucked in the middle of the night, when they were pounding plywood over the counter windows that are mandated that you have observers, and they pounded plywood so the count couldn't be observed? But Trump still got the most votes of all time. That vegetable that was installed in the White House to be Barack Obama's third term can't fill a parking. Look at these people. That vegetable can't fill a Walmart parking lot.
So since he's admitting he lost, that means he'll accept the results of this next election, right?
How the hell do you get elected, right? You know how they got elected? By cheating. They get elected by cheating.
Of course not. And this time, to claim election fraud for this election, he's going to use anti-Semitism.
If I don't win this election, and the Jewish people would really have a lot to do with that if that happens, because at 40%, that means 60% of the people are voting for the enemy.
The whisker comments are always he didn't flat out say it. So MAGA is always just going to come up with an excuse, as if we have to somehow interpret what Trump's saying, because this is a man who speaks his mind, but somehow they'll interpret it as code. The man has never spoken in code. It's always just been so flat out. That's also what they love about him. That is why he has a following, because he's, speaks his mind. But then, of course, they all try to decode what he said. It's like he lost by a whisker. So yeah, but he lost, and yeah. So you look at the birther lie. Trump started the birther lie, and then he admitted during the debate with Hillary that he's like, oh no, he abandoned it and said, yeah, that's actually it's actually not true. And, he tossed it to the side. People still believe that Obama was not, a natural born US citizen, even though Trump admitted it and admitted that the story had no merit and, didn't matter. Trump could come out today and say this, I actually did lose. Sorry. Yeah, my bad. That none of his supporters would believe him. They wouldn't believe him. The fact that there was booing whenever he would talk about getting vaccinated, for all the QAnon nonsense and anti-COVID stuff he has spewed from his campaign, his own people, when he actually does want them to get in line for stuff. With the vaccine, I've been at rallies, I've watched it where he said, I did get vaccinated. If you can, it's your choice. But everyone's like, boo. This is Trump saying he got vaccinated. So this is, you will see a next generation that is they're too right wing for Trump. Basically Trump is too establishment, for them. Fun times. So there's two things, this is going to be hoping that he loses, fingers crossed, knock on wood. It's going to be different for him to do a January 6th thing because he's not the president. It was easier then because he was the president of the United States of America, and you were acting on behalf of the president of the United States of America. Much different energy. Not to say that people won't react with violence and crazy and stuff like that. However, it's different. when he's not the president. He's not in charge. And, he's definitely not going to pardon you. So much different energy. And that was, I remember the threats that I got dropped off. I remember I was getting a lot of threats leading up to the 2020 election. It was normalized. And that dropped off after J6. People were, dialed it back and they're like, okay, yeah, I don't know about this. He's nowhere to be found. I don't know if I'm not getting a pardon for this. And they watched him just leave the J6ers in the lurch. Recently, though, that's stepped back up. People are like, they're like, oh, well, you know what? He might win. And if he wins, they're ready to rock and roll. You have people saying, I'm ready to rock, for this country and get a gun and all of that. If he, loses, they're going to do the same thing if he wins. If he wins, it's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm going to act on behalf of the president of the United States of America. And, that is, when you see J6, what the tragic thing about all these people, they weren't necessarily trying to stop the vote. They were trying to find evidence. They're going in, stealing Nancy Pelosi's laptop because they're like, but there's got to be some evidence that, that they were, working, with the voting machine company and Hugo Chavez and, all of that nonsense. You had them going in, when the Viking and that crew went into Congress and started going through stuff. It was like, well, there's got to be, a smoking gun somewhere here. And that was sad to me, right? I was like, this is how deluded you are. Because, there's a point, there are elected officials, there are federal officials, there are members of the United States Congress that think the election was stolen. Normally, you go back in the day, you go back to my day when, the Republicans knew what they were spewing was absolute garbage, but they were like, this works on my people, so I'm gonna keep it up. Now you actually have them they believe this. The fact that more than, a few people believe this is terrifying. There's millions of human beings in the United States that believe this. And what is really baffling to me, if you're a Republican and you know goddamn well that he lost, you're planning to vote for Trump again, he lost the first time, and so it would stand to reason that everything else he did after that was just duplicitous, and you're still going to vote for him. There's something wrong with you. You just, I don't know, maybe you just hate trans people that much. You're like, what, I will vote for this awful human being because trans people, need to be exterminated. That's how they feel. That's how I'm, supposing they feel. I mean, do they feel different? Do you feel different? Are you one of those people? Let me know in the comments.
On the presidential campaign trail, Kamala Harris keeps focusing on the economy, and Donald Trump, at least to the voters, keeps focusing on fear. Here's a part of a speech that Kamala Harris gave in Pittsburgh at the Pittsburgh Economic Club. Watch.
Look, I'm a capitalist. I believe in free and fair markets. I believe in consistent and transparent rules of the road to create a stable business environment. And I know the power of American innovation. I've been working with entrepreneurs and business owners my whole career. And I believe companies need to play by the rules. Respect the rights of workers and unions, and abide by fair competition. And if they don't, I will hold them accountable.
So not only was Kamala Harris well received at the Pittsburgh Economic Club, and you can hear the applause, she was also very well received on Wall Street. A number of investors, a number of stock analysts who saw her remarks expressed their sort of satisfaction in what she said. Because remember, the portrayal of Kamala Harris from the Republicans has been, oh, she's a socialist, she's a communist, she wants to gut the capitalist system. And there's Kamala Harris said, no, 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 I believe in capitalism. I believe that the entrepreneurial spirit should be alive and well in America. She just wants to make sure that corporations and big companies don't have an unfair advantage over the rest of us. That's why she's talking about going after corporate greed and trying to target price gouging. And there's some progressives who hope that she goes even further and raises the corporate tax rate and tries to make it very clear to corporations that your days of getting essentially government welfare and getting all sorts of breaks that the rest of us don't get, those days are over. And oh, by the way, if you're a big corporation, a big energy company, and you pollute our environment, instead of it being able to do that for free, as they've been able to do for so many years, now you're going to have to pay. That's the hope in terms of where progressives are with Kamala Harris. But at the moment, she's trying to portray herself as somebody who can be relied upon to protect the capitalist system, to help small businesses. She rolled out a plan a few weeks ago in which somebody who starts a new small business will get a $50,000 tax credit instead of the $5,000 that exists now. Small business owners, people love that. Wall Street loves that because it'll spur more small businesses and encourage people to take more risks and chances to start up businesses. So she's doing all the right things in terms of the economy. And her focus on the economy is making a difference because the polls suggest, and we're going to get to those in just a moment, that she's gaining ground on economic issues, particularly in the swing states. Now, contrast Kamala Harris talking with details about her plans and talking about the economy. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who is talking more in generalities and focusing on fear in his speeches. Donald Trump says we should be very, very afraid of Haitian migrants and immigrants who are crossing the border illegally. And by the way, the Haitians are here legally, but Donald Trump is portraying this as lawlessness and crime and chaos, and we should all be terrified. Here's what Donald Trump said to an audience in Pennsylvania, again, about Haitian immigrants. Watch.
Not far from here, the 4,000 person town of Charleroi. Do people, oh, you know, Charleroi. In Charleroi, Pennsylvania, has seen a 2,000% increase in the population of their town. Do you know that, right?
The reason we do not know what Donald Trump said to be true is because the population of this town was 4,000. And if you do the math, 2,000 would make it 100,000. 2,000% would make it 100,000. That's ridiculous. The mayor, who says, again, the population of Charleroi, 4,000, they've had 700 or 800 migrants arrive. That's about 20%. That's very different from 2,000%. And by the way, the migrants were asked to come to Charleroi by a local packaging factory, which needed the labor, and went to an employment agency and said, we need some help. And the employment agency encouraged the Haitians, many of them from Florida, to move to Charleroi, Pennsylvania, where the cost of living is less and where there's guaranteed work. And all of these Haitians are in Charleroi legally. They are lawfully here in the United States, but not according to Donald Trump. He and J.D. Vance say, oh, no, these are undocumented migrants. No, they're not. And everybody in Charleroi says they are credited with providing something of an economic resurgence in the town because a lot of people left the town over the last 10 years. There are a lot of vacant houses that are now being occupied by these Haitian immigrants who are, in addition to working in the factory, they're starting businesses. And so the town is thriving economically. Now, some people may not like the fact that 20% of the population now in Charleroi consists of Haitian immigrants who have a different skin color than most of the people in Charleroi. But there's nothing, but that gets to the racism that Donald Trump is trying to play on. And it's racism that Donald Trump is trying to turn into fear. His campaign is based on fear that crime is going way up, even though the FBI crime statistics say we have the lowest crime rates now in 50 years, and that violent crimes went down 3% this year compared to last year, that murders went down 11%. But Donald Trump doesn't want to accept facts. He wants everybody to be terrified and to think that because of Democrats, we have mass chaos, we have lawlessness, and we should be terrified just to live in our homes and to walk the streets. And as part of that message, Donald Trump is now trying to make it a central theme of his appeal to women, where Donald Trump, according to polls, is losing women voters by 10 percentage points or so. So Donald Trump is now trying to explain to women that they don't have to be fearful if he's the president of the United States.
To the great women of our country, You will be protected, and I will be your protector. Women will be happy, healthy, confident, and free. You will no longer be thinking about abortion. So all they talk about abortion. You will no longer have anxiety from all of the problems our country has today. You will be protected, and I will be your protector.
I will be your protector. Donald Trump, an adjudicated rapist who a jury found liable for sexual assault, Donald Trump claims that he can be the protector of women? That's insane. And oh, by the way, I think most women in this country have not forgotten that it was Donald Trump's Supreme Court justices who a couple of years ago got rid of Roe versus Wade, which, in other words, they got rid of federal protections for abortion rights. And now you have some states across the United States where if you're 6 weeks pregnant, 6 week pregnant, you're out of luck in terms of terminating the pregnancy. You have to go to another state. Well, how does eliminating women's reproductive rights make them safer? How does Donald Trump claim to be the protector given his record? This isn't about policy for Donald Trump, obviously. It's about politics because Donald Trump has been told you're losing women very badly. We need to say something. And so Donald Trump comes up with this cockamamie nonsense that he's going to be the protector, not because he actually would be the protector if he's in office, but because this is transactional for him. He needs women's support in order to win this election, which he's losing right now. And so he says this crazy nonsense to try to convince at least some women, hey, I'm a nice guy, you can trust me. But what's really going on, in my view, is that this is sort of, Donald Trump has become sort of like the abusive boyfriend or husband. And that is an abusive boyfriend or husband, from what everything that I've sort of read, will sort of play on people's insecurities, play on women's insecurities, diminish their confidence, portray the world as terrible, and me, the husband, the boyfriend, we're the only one that can protect you. And it goes on and it goes on. And instead of showing women respect, the abusive boyfriend or husband demeans them and talks down to them. Who talks to women the way Donald Trump just spoke to women in that speech? In my view, people who don't have much regard for women. And so Donald Trump is, in my view, like that sort of abusive husband or boyfriend, but the end is inevitable. In most cases, that boyfriend gets dumped. And in my view, Donald Trump is going to get dumped this November, largely because of women voters who see right through this. Who, by the way, and I'd be curious to see, your views in the comment section. Who talks to women the way Donald Trump just did? I mean, it's ridiculous. And by the way, the national polls now keep showing that Kamala Harris is extending her lead. Let's go through some of the national polls. Quinnipiac, Harris 48, Trump 48, margin of error 2.4. Okay, so Quinnipiac is tied. CNN, Harris 48, Trump 47, margin of error is 3. That's a slight lead according to CNN. Rasmussen reports Harris 48, 46, Trump 48. So in Rasmussen, the political pollster, Donald Trump is ahead by 2. But Reuters Ipsos, which is far more credible, Kamala Harris 50, Donald Trump 44. That's a 6-point spread. The margin of error is 4. And the best poll, in my estimation, in terms of credibility, Morning Consult, Harris 50, Trump 45. The margin of error is 1.
And she's winning on the margin of who cares about people like me, which is an important index. Mm-hmm. President Trump carried that issue, for example, in 2016. People thought he cared more about people like me than Hillary Clinton did. So we're just going to see a battle on this. Trump is going to push the issues. She's going to push the character and try and diminish his advantage on the issues. We'll see how it all plays out.
Now, those are just the national polls. Let's take a look at some of the swing state polls. And there's a new poll that shows Kamala Harris narrowly beating Donald Trump in 6 swing states. The poll is from Bloomberg News and Morning Consult. Nevada, Kamala Harris +7. Pennsylvania, Harris +5. Michigan, Harris +3. Wisconsin, Harris +3. Arizona, Harris +3. Georgia, even. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris both at 49. North Carolina, Harris +2. North Carolina is a state where Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson is running for governor, and his campaign has imploded with the revelations, the allegations that he was on various porn sites 10 years ago. He referred to himself as a black Nazi. He had all sorts of things that we cannot print or cannot say on a broadcast. He claims that the allegations are untrue, that he's going to take legal action against CNN. Well, what's been so interesting is that Donald Trump was asked about, let's see if this will work. Donald Trump was asked about Mark Robinson.
Are you going to pull your endorsement of Mark Robinson?
I don't know the situation.
Do you believe that you...
Really? Donald Trump says he doesn't know what's going on with Mark Robinson, even though he endorsed Mark Robinson. He could take his endorsement away, but that would guarantee that the Democrats would win the governor's seat, and it might also depress Republican turnout in North Carolina because they figure, oh, the race is over, at least at the gubernatorial race, and people who may not care about the presidential race and are voting because of other offices might not show up. The fact that Donald Trump is having to deal with this, though, could cost him North Carolina. And keep in mind, if Donald Trump loses North Carolina and those electoral votes, which were widely expected to go to Kamala Harris, even the Harris campaign was not expecting to be super competitive there. If she wins North Carolina, this race is over, and it starts to get into landslide territory for Kamala Harris. That's how significant North Carolina is. It is must win for Donald Trump. Harris's map, she can afford to lose North Carolina. But again, the latest poll has her up +2, and the Republican controversy over Mark Robinson and Donald Trump claiming to be blissfully unaware of what's going on, that is not helping Donald Trump.